All right, can I get a motion to approve our agenda this morning?
Moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. And we'll move on to our consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right. Will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. And we'll move on to regular business. First, we have board discussion and action to approve our insurance renewal with Jensen Insurance. Good morning. Come on up.
Greetings from the southern end of the county.
Greetings.
Nice, beautiful drive on a fall morning. I think it's nice.
I trust you abated the speed limit and everything?
Oh, yeah, we were fine.
Okay.
It's truly a pleasure and an honor to be here once again to visit with you folks. I believe this is very humbly year number 44 that we've had the opportunity, and we thank you so much for the trust that you've put in our agency. Our agency's been around, we're celebrating 79 years this year. With Zach, it's 4 generations. During all those years, we've been insured with EMC, which is the same company, Employers Mutual Company is what that stands for. And we did form a safety dividend program with them back in the early 90s, which allows us to really have the best of both worlds. They're an A-rated company, and which gives us the stability and also allows that company to focus in on this class of business of counties. We're the managing general agency on that. There's about 18 counties in the program today. It does have the potential of dividends, of which we've struggled with recently, as claims have been a little bit too high. The insurance industry currently is going through some difficult times, if you will. Before I get into that a little bit, I'll just back up. In the world of insuring counties, there aren't many companies that do that. Basically, in South Dakota, as far as I know, we've got EMC in the pool. It's kind of a specialty deal. EMC insures counties, public entities in all 50 states. It's kind of one of their specialties that they do. And they do a good job of it because that's what a lot of counties, cities, schools, townships, they're big into that area. The industry is struggling a little bit primarily in the area of property. In this last year, 2022, there were 18 national disasters in the United States exceeding $1 billion. The average from 1980 to 2022 was 8. Currently this year, it looks like it's going to be exceeding 18 significantly. So these disasters, natural disasters of earthquakes and hurricanes and even fires and all these problems, has really raised havoc with the insurance industry as well as the reinsurance industry. So, and then add to that the cost of repairs and construction. It's really created some problems in the property world. Also in the commercial auto area, that's an area that companies are struggling to be profitable with distracted driving, increasing cost of repairs and litigation. That's all increased, so they're having a hard time in that area as well. Regarding our county, unfortunately, our claims activity, excuse me, has increased significantly over the last few years. Keep in mind the average break-even loss ratio is about 60%. Our loss ratio this last year is 270. Our 5-year loss ratio is about 118. Our auto loss ratio for last year, 794%. our 5-year auto loss ratio was 344%. So we got a little work to do. The good news is that we're bringing you a pretty good renewal. Due to our longevity with EMC and our relationship with EMC, that helps a lot during these times. Along with that, unfortunately, when we've had a lot of credits in the premium side, that will be removed primarily on the auto. It's just on the auto is where our problem is. The rest of our renewal, excuse me, is pretty flat cost-wise. We've got a little bit of an increase in the values of the property. There's a little bit of an increase in the general liability, mainly because of expenditures have increased. And the auto has increased, and the auto and the liability underlying primarily drive the umbrella, so the umbrella's up a little bit as well. But our biggest issue is the auto that we need to work on. The good news is that we got a plan. EMC it's one of the best loss control services in the industry. Actually, we had this happen to one of our neighboring counties a few years ago, where our auto loss ratio got a little out of whack. And EMC moved in with their loss control services, and the loss ratio reduced over the period of those 3 years to the next 3 years from 246% to 10. And that's quite magical when you can do that, but they really do a good job. Well, a few years ago, maybe Jim, you could remember this, but quite a few years ago, EMC came in and lost control of everything in the county. Put together a nice booklet and did a good job of that. And now their primarily will focus most likely, on the highway department and on the sheriff's department. And zero in on what's going on and come up with some ideas, and usually that's pretty effective. So they're on board, we've talked to them about it, and they're good to go with that. And I think that should do a good job for them to do their magic. So anyway, that's just kind of a little summary of what we got going on. Like I say, I think we bring you a good renewal. And
Mark, I have a question. If we have a renewal this year, but if we really don't do anything, what happens the year after?
it's a great question, Jim. If we don't get this cleaned up this year, we could have real trouble next year. And the problem is, with these kind of loss ratios going into the marketplace, it's very difficult. I mean, we'd be in the non-standard markets to try and piece it together. So it's very critical that we have your support and the support of the department heads, which we've talked to Terry and Steve. We're going to visit with them after this meeting. And so they're on board so that we get this turned around. And I know we can. Over the years, Lincoln County has been very good. It's just these last, basically 5 years, for some reason, it's gone the other way.
It's similar to if you get a letter, personal letter from your insurance company and says, if you get another ticket, you'll be on high risk, right?
It is very similar to that.
And then you never let your wife see that either.
Speaking from personal experience there, Commissioner?
Yes,
Yeah, it's very important, pretty critical that we get this cleaned up and get working on it, so.
So, Mark, to that end, what do we do as policymakers here? Is EMC Loss Control going to issue us some recommendations as to
Perhaps.
what this commission does in order to cut down on basically too many county employees having too many car accidents?
They may, Joel, I don't know, they work in various ways, and I don't know, most of the claims, wherever they're at in the auto, they'll come up with some ideas, and there may be something that you'll need to act on.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Yeah, could very well be, yeah.
Oh, and thanks for your 44 years of service to the county. Is that what you said, 44 years?
Yeah,
I caught
yeah.
at the beginning, your firm? Yeah.
Yeah, it's been very, very good. I've been doing this for 48, so it was one of my earlier group of them. So, yeah, thank you again. So I think that pretty well kind of wraps up what the plan is there. And I'm going to let Zach run over our coverages briefly, do the highlights, the 30,000-foot overview to give you the summary there.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Zach.
I'm going to start with the property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got here, this is the statement of values, which has the, thank you. This is our statement of values. And on the first page, you'll see the courthouse is broken out separately from the blanket just due to the significant value. And as an overall, so we've got the courthouse building here at 28 million, the business personal property and all the contents inside here at 3.4. Those are, those two are separate from the blanket. We've got a all peril deductible, fire, lightning, water breakage. We've got a $5,000 all peril deductible. We've got a separate wind and hail deductible. Now, this is gonna be on the courthouse and all the other locations. We've got a $25,000 wind and hail only deductible. And that is on a per occurrence deductible. It's not specific per building. So we've got a $25,000 wind and hail, $5,000 all peril. When we look at the total of all the property, we've got a total of almost 48 million in total property value. Last year, due to the inflation, last year we were at about 42.5 million. So we're up in value just over 5 million in total property value. Now, when we look at the rate and the cost of insurance, that has not changed. Our rate has remained the same, surprisingly, with what we've seen the last 3-4 years with COVID and building costs and labor and whatnot. Our rate has not changed, but our value has increased by just over 5 million. In addition to the, fire, lightning, wind, hail, theft, vandalism, we've also got equipment breakdown for the sudden and accidental power surges that may come into any of the buildings. That's included as well. But as we kind of browse through there, each section is going to be up just a little bit just due to the cost of building materials. We have also added here in the last few years, I think it's location, we've added some fairground, location 7, a couple buildings over in Lenox. No, it's not 7, it's location 8, I'm sorry, location 8. A couple buildings over there. So that's kind of a brief summary on the property. That's the only handout I have on the property. With 113 vehicles, I didn't think that was necessary to flip through 56 pages of vehicles, as well as the equipment. I'll buzz over the equipment next year, but so the contraction or the contractor's equipment, the equipment in sheriff's vehicles, the radios, the towers. We've got a total value of 3.2 million. We're really close. We're within about 150,000 of last year. And that rate has not moved either. That rate has remained the same. We do have a $2,500 deductible on the inland marine, and the valuation is based on the current market value on a skid loader or payloader. Depreciation has not been much of a thing the last few years, but we do want those values to reflect the market value, and we do pass those around to the department heads. I have a few copies with me for them to review. But that's kind of, there's really not a whole lot of change there. Jumping over to the auto, our auto liability, we're at $1 million for a combined limit, property damage, bodily injury in the event we're responsible for any accidents. We've got medical payments of $5,000 on some specific vehicles, not all vehicles, primarily the sheriff's vehicles where they may haul passengers. We've got a $5,000 medical limit there. Comp and collision, we've got a $2,000 deductible across the board for, again, various units that warrant comp and collision, but we've got a $2,000 deductible on comp and collision. We've got a total, I think I mentioned, we got a total of 113 vehicles on there. In addition to our $1 million limit of liability, we've got hired and non-owned auto liability that is designed for vehicles used, borrowed, rented within the county. That $1 million limit of liability would apply. We've also got some enhancements on here. We've got a $0 deductible for glass. If we have to repair broken windshields, there's no deductible that applies there. We've got a sub-limit of towing of $100 for private passenger vehicles and $500 for the larger vehicles. We've also got some pollution coverage that is included as well. And as far as the number of vehicles, we're within a couple. I think last year we had 115. This year we're at 113 as far as total vehicles. And we'll go through those as well with the department heads to make sure we've got the correct vehicles there. The general liability, we're at $1 million per occurrence, $2 million for the aggregate limit, which provides coverage for the general operations of the county, which includes the pesticide, the herbicide application that is done. We've also picked up the employee benefit liability, benefits that are provided to the employees within the county. And, the fairgrounds, the streets and the highways. We do have a property damage deductible of $1,000. That is a standard property damage deductible of $1,000 per claim. We've also picked up some drone liability here. We have a $100,000 limit of drone liability with a $2,500 deductible. We do not provide physical damage on the drones. It's a liability only. I think there's a couple drones. The expenditures are up from last year. Those are audited. So those are up. And those kind of are what they are when those come through at the end of the year. But those are up. I should note our employee benefit liability dates back to October of 1999. In the event anything were to come forth over the past years, that dates back to 1999. Alongside the liability, we have our linebacker, our errors and omissions, our board and directors liability, which runs at $1 million limit, including all employees, board members, state's attorneys, deputies, planning and zoning boards. That dates back to October of '99 as well. We have a $25,000 deductible that applies to our directors and officers liability. That's going to apply per claim. And again, I think I mentioned that dates back to October of '99, along with the employment practices liability for defamation of character, libel, slander, and whatnot. Law enforcement liability kind of comes along those lines. We've got $1 million limit of liability, including the professional liability, as well as the libel, slander, defamation of character. Wrongful arrest, that does carry a $10,000 deductible for law enforcement. We've got, as far as crime coverage goes, we've got a blanket amount of $25,000 for all employees. And we do have some specific amounts. We've higher limits that are specific bonds, $100,000 for the auditor, the sheriff, and Becky. And then we've also got $250,000 for Deb. Those are specific bonds for those positions. So the umbrella, which we have a $5 million umbrella, goes over and above all of our underlying liability. I kind of jumped over a little bit on the airport portion of it. Our $5 million umbrella goes over everything except the airport, our employer liability on the work comp, and the drone. Those three things our umbrella does not go over and above. We do have a separate liability policy for the airport. Up in T, it's more of a contingent liability. That is a separate policy. And then lastly, we get into the data, the cyber data compromise, cyber liability, the computer attack coverage, which we've got $100,000 of data coverage. We got this $250,000 computer attack with some sublimits, some extortion, computer extortion, $25,000 there. I've worked with Jake over the last couple of years to kind of come up with those limits, I guess, is what I would say. He's kind of suggested those limits. But forensic review, there's a handful of things that go along with the cyber coverage. So that's kind of a brief rundown of, I don't have as many handouts as we typically do, but there's a lot of pages. So that's kind of a brief rundown. Any questions on any portion of the coverages?
Anybody have questions?
From the agricultural standpoint, from the weed board and so on and so forth, we are covered, right?
Yes,
Because we
yes,
do
yep.
both spring and fall spraying.
Yep, you're right, Jim. Weed board is included in that as well.
The majority of the renewals, Zach, are pretty much flat, right?
Right. Majority,
Yeah.
yes.
There's a hiccup in there, but.
There is, yeah. Yep, and it's
But-
it is tied to the
but
auto.
Basically, for all the property and everything else, it remains fairly
Yes,
constant.
yes, you're right. Yep, it's the auto and the umbrella, which those two are tied together.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the property rates, the inland marine rate, the equipment is all level.
You mentioned that our employee benefit hasn't changed since what year was that?
Well, it has a retroactive date going back to October 5th of 1999.
Yeah.
So in the event we have something that pops up today that took place back in, 2006 or whatever the date may be, we would have coverage.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Zach, what is the increased dollar amount that the county's paying in terms of its renewal?
We've got, as far as premium to premium, we're looking at about an increase of about 85,000.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Does this also include the new property we have purchased as far as liability? I mean, where we're gonna have a building project next year, beginning? Well, that's something that has to be addressed, or?
Yes, when construction is beginning or starting, yes, we would need to address that at that time.
All right, if there's nothing else, I consider a motion to approve the renewal.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any public input on this agenda item? All right, if not, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Alright,
you.
Next
Thank you,
item
guys.
on our agenda, we have board action to approve and authorize the chair and auditor to execute a letter of engagement with South Dakota Department of Legislative Audit for our audit for 2022. Hi, good morning. Could you state your name and tell us where you're from?
Good morning, David Weidler, Department of Legislative Audit, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I'm here to present the engagement letter for the fiscal year 2022 audit of Lincoln County. Pretty much the same as last year. There's some more additional language regarding the federal grant portion that we're gonna have to do this year with your expenditure of the ARPA money. Essentially, it goes over what our audit objectives are. We're gonna give an opinion on your statements, your schedule of expenditures of federal awards, and other information given in your financial statements. It also talks about some of the responsibilities of management regarding the internal controls of the county, the presentation of the statements, and identifying any federal grant programs that we may need information for. It talks about the procedures that we're gonna perform in our audits. But the biggest thing that you guys are probably looking for is on the second to the last page. I believe you guys have a copy of the letter. Is the billable rate for the audit this year. Currently, the state is in the fiscal year 2024. I have not been made aware of an updated billable rate, but the current rate that I'm aware of is $78 an hour. That's time that you will be billed on us actually working on the audit, not any time traveling here or any time that we spend here working on any other projects that we may be working on. Other than that, I guess if you guys have any questions for me about it, I can certainly answer them.
Anybody have questions? All right, if not, I consider a motion to approve and authorize execution of the letter of engagement.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you. I've got a motion by Schmidt, second by Aaron's. Any public input on this agenda item? All right, if not, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes, that motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Thank
If
you.
you guys have anything that you want us to look at, especially, we are just across the hall from the auditor, Register of Deeds office in the election room, so.
All right, thank
All
you.
right, thank you, guys.
All right, then we have a first reading. Who's handling that?
For an ordinance of Lincoln County, South Dakota, amending the revised zoning ordinance for Lincoln County by rezoning Tract 2 Slacks Edition, North 1/2, Northeast 1/4, Section 9, Township 99N, Range 49W, Dayton Township from the A1 Agricultural District to the RR Rural Residential District. The Planning Commission recommends denial 5-0.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is item 4 on our agenda. To execute an agreement with ADP for payroll software and human resource software. Good morning, Jake.
Good morning. I'm seeking authorization to get the contract signed for ADP for HR and payroll. It's come to our attention that we wanted to keep a little bit more efficiencies with our employee management. And our human resources director did a lot of research and found a bunch of options, and we've narrowed it down to ADP. So we are looking to get that signed. We had a meeting with Commission Office, the IT office, and the Auditor's Office, along with Human Resources, and thought this was the best option. So if this contract is signed, it'll cost the county $39,217 for a 3-year period, with an $11,480 or $840 for implementation. This project is budgeted in the 2024 budget, and there should be a cost shift because all of the other softwares that we have will be discontinued once this is implemented. So this will actually cover human resources on managing employees there. They didn't really have a software in the first place, and now they'll have something to help manage that. It'll cover our recruiting, our payroll, just pretty much anything for everybody, performance evaluations, communications with the employee, time tracking, everything in one stop, one location for all the employees to use instead of all of these separate places to find everything.
So as far as like cost shifting or making this more cost neutral, or how many software programs approximately do you think you're getting rid of?
1, 2, 3, about 3 to 4.
Okay.
3 to 4. We should only see an increase to the budget about, I think it was like $12,000 to $15,000 total of an increase, because the rest is a cost shift.
Yeah.
Once everything gets canceled.
And more efficient.
Very. Yes, it's a very impressive software. And we're excited to, if you approve to sign it.
All right, thank you. Anybody have questions for Jake? All right, anything, and did you have anything you wanted to say about it, Steve, or we good? You don't have to.
Good morning.
Good
Steve
morning.
Rasmus, Commissioner Administrative Officer. Overall, this software will give us some organizational tools for predicting retirement, hiring, and costs for positions. Some of the data that we can get will be accessed on a regional basis for other vendor services with other government entities, so we can kind of see what pricing has been for particular positions and where those trends go. So it'll help for that purpose, as well as offloading some of the other softwares like NeoGov and ExecuTime and things that like I said, are not having the same advantages that this would have, being in it seamless. It would work with all the different departments. So a lot of
All right.
advantages with this software.
All right, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Steve?
Well, I just congratulate all of them for taking the leadership and doing some, modernization and putting this all under one package. So Stacy and all the rest did well.
All right,
Implementation costs, that's just one-time costs. This, okay.
And the other software, I think the majority of them, I think will phase out by February. NeoGov is up in February, so won't have a lot of overlap with the existing softwares that we're going to be jettisoning.
all right, great.
Very good.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions for Jake? All right, thank you.
My computer works, Jake, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I'd ask for a motion to authorize execution of the agreement with ADP.
So
Also
moved.
move, Madam Chair.
Second.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Gibbon, a second by Commissioner Aaron's. Any public input on this agenda item? All right, if not, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's.
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes, that motion carries. And we'll move on to our opportunity for public comment. If there's anyone in the audience who wants to come up and speak to the policies or services of the county, come on up.
Dwayne Skipper, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. U.S. wildfires release enormous amounts of carbon dioxide, quoted from the National Science Foundation. Wildfires release large amounts of carbon dioxide, black and brown carbon, and ozone precursors into the atmosphere, quoted from NOAA research. The blazes that devastated Northern California in 2017 emitted as much CO2 in 1 week as all of California's cars and trucks emit in 1 year. Quoted from Inside Climate News, How Wildfires Can Affect Climate Change. So just how insignificant is the CO2 from 65 ethanol plants, about 70,000 square miles of forest wildfires is burning or has burned in North America year-to-date 2023. It was 27,000 square miles in June. The approximate smokestack CO2 release size of each ethanol plant is 10,000 square feet. 65 ethanol plant emission stacks, each the size of an average home lot, 100 feet by 100 feet, side by side, is 2.33% of 1 square mile. This is equivalent to taking one ant, cutting it into 50 pieces, and throwing one piece into an anthill of 70,000. Could you find the microscopic piece of ant? An acre of corn yielding 200 bushels would fill a small 14 by 7 foot trailer with 4 foot wide sideboards. It takes about 4 months of 1 year to grow that much corn. Compare the CO2 volume release of the 200 bushels of corn to 1 acre of forest fire with 100 to 200 mature 60 feet trees that were capturing and storing CO2 for 50 years or more. Do you think there is enough of an ethanol CO2 problem to justify the United States government printing and borrowing billions of funny money dollars and using it to incentivize pipeline and ethanol plant owners, let alone confiscation of private property to accomplish this insidious transfer of wealth? How far would the pipeline projects go if non-government money, after-tax money, was used? Thousands of common people have voiced their opposition to this with little or no proponent testimony. Yet the majority of local, state, and federal representatives are silent and do nothing. And I ask why. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to come up and speak today? All right, if not, we'll move on to our commissioner reports. Any commissioners have reports they'd like to make?
Madam Chair, last week, we were talking briefly about the convention that was held in Sioux Falls for the counties. But the one thing we didn't mention was that Lincoln County received a Golden Award for Safety Award. And that's something that we have had now for several years, and it reflects our effort to try to make Lincoln County a much more safer place to work. Our Mr. Rambo does the research behind it, and our auditor completes the application. So that's something we should recognize both of them for their efforts. But it does reflect, I think, well on Lincoln County, because we've been a bronze star and a gold star, and next year maybe we'll reach the platinum level, and we can really grow well large. But it's something I'd like to just say thank you to both Rambo and to our auditor for their efforts.
All right, thank you for that. Any other commission reports this morning? All right, if not, we need an executive session today? We do. What sections? 1, 2, and, oh, all of them. All right, I need a motion to go into executive session on SDCL 125-2, sub 1, sub 3, and sub 4.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Commissioner Landine?
Yes, motion carries.
Executive session.
Second.
Thank you. I've got a motion by Aaron's, a second by Schmidt to come out of executive session. Will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Commissioner Landine?
Yes, that motion carries. I'll consider a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Aaron's, second by Gibbon to come out of to adjourn. Will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Commissioner Landine?
Yes, that motion carries. Thanks, everyone.